Quadroatrically.
Quadrotritically. Captain's Pod, Stardate 81-17-23.2. Welcome aboard Starship's Enterprise, and thank you for joining us as we take a brief short leave from the world of CinemaSins to enjoy the universe of Star Trek. I'm your Captain Ian Whittington, and with me as always, she's got no bloody A, B, C, but she does have a D, 3 E's and an N. It's Ambassador Deneé.
Are we talking about my bra size? This is just not appropriate.
Enterprise A, B, C. Wait, is there an N bra size?
Yeah.
N? That's awesome.
I don't know. No,
okay.
It's not.
No, it's not.
What is wrong with you?
It's not for the person carrying the ends.
My back
it's really
just
not.
I literally just threw out
Spasmed.
several vertebrae just hearing you say that. And it's my fault because I mentioned it.
Yes, I deliberately avoided leaving it on the... But she does have a D. Like, I avoided that and I did your whole name. I was trying to be good. Yes. Yeah. Well, how are you, Ambassador? Welcome to season 11 of Captain's Pod.
I can't believe that we've made it this far. I don't know what to expect, but I'm excited.
It's been a long road.
Last time we had like an inter-season like this, we did a data-focused element.
We did.
And I think last week you said what this season's focus is going to be, but I forgot.
It's an option. So
okay.
This is our biggest gap between live action, real, not necessarily live action, but Star Trek being live and on screen. Because obviously this show started with Picard, and we've kind of had some in-between seasons between Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Picard, but now we have a gap where we're going to be diving into just Star Trek that's already happened. And a theme that we kind of thought it came up with was episodes that get revisited in other iterations of Star Trek, and we'll see how we feel about that, but that could be a lot of fun. We're definitely doing that for the first 2 episodes. We're going to do your very first, the original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, and then next week will be a Deep Space Nine follow-up, Trials and Tribulations. But first, let's do an email. Okay, hailing frequencies open, everyone. It's time for us to read your emails from Discord, Twitter, and, well, email. We have one from Lodair, who is a multiple emailer, but this one is a bit more specific and not Star Trek-y for Deneé.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, I am sick of talking about Star Trek. Yeah, with regards to CinemaSins, do you have the option of recusing yourself from sinning a TV show or movie the same way that you could excuse yourself from jury duty because of like a conflict of interest? Like, is there like something that makes you not impartial and you're like, I can't sin this, I either hate it too much, I love it too much?
Oh, I see. I thought that question was going to like, do you have to sin what you're assigned? That's kind of where I thought the question
similar.
Was
it's a
going.
similar kind of thought, but it's more like, hey, I can't do this for these reasons, and do we like take that into account?
Well, I guess it's kind of the same question in a way, because I would not be assigned the Meg, for example, because of my fear
100%.
of sharks, and I have a strong like visceral reaction to that. I can't even think about it too long, or I start to kind of go into panic mode. It's a weird thing, but it's just part of my life.
That's how phobias work.
I would never be assigned that because my team knows that. There's times whenever I'm going to be reviewing or sending something, and there's going to be some triggers, and so y'all kind of get to know each other a bit, and so I'll get like a little heads up. You know, at this point in time, this happens. But the answer is no. I have not gotten into writing something and then had to excuse myself because I couldn't write around it somehow.
Yeah.
But it is very difficult. And it's not often things that are a trigger for me. Like, for example, I don't want to stay on sharks too long, but that's just the example that's there. So like if there was something about the underwater part, I would just skip over that part and then trust my writing partner to sort of fill in the gap there, because I don't want to do that. But usually it's not so permeated in the content that I have to take myself out of the entire thing. Usually those triggers from me would be little blips that I can kind of like scan through and trust my writing partner. And then of course we have a really great team, so I can always write to my partner and say, I really struggled with this part. However, that said, there are some movies and some TV shows that have been very difficult for me to write on, even in the difficult things I skip over, just in general. I just wrote on a script that is one of the most difficult scripts I have ever had to write on. Major writer's block. Like self-doubt, self-loathing, imposter syndrome, just like I did not like what I was watching, and it wasn't because there were any triggers, it was because it was so fucking stupid.
I wish we could say what the movie was.
I do too. I really
we'll
fucking
circle back
do.
to this when it comes out.
I hope we remember to come back to it. It was the dumbest thing I've probably ever had to fucking watch, and it was so stupid I couldn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it. I don't enjoy one of the actors in it usually anyway, so it was just like asking me to sin just the driest thing. And the movie didn't have a point. Like it really wasn't. It's just a dumb comedy, and I was stuck. That is so hard. And I can't just be like, hey, I don't wanna. You know, I mean, I could. I literally could go to my team and say, guys, I'm really struggling. Please, can someone take this? And then I would have to take a different script because we do have that care for each other. But I would never want to burden my team like that. Especially when it's just like
you don't know until you're in it. There's nothing about this movie that would immediately go, oh, this is going to be really freaking hard for me. So then you're in it. And it's like, it's a little bit late to switch out unless you really have to. I would
literally have to message somebody and say, hey, I know you're working on this, but can we switch out in the next 10 minutes because I hate it. And it just feels like a cop-out. Like, why can't I reach deeper and write differently and find that quirky voice inside of me? But I hated it so much, it was like a big mental block. So that was really difficult. But yes, I could recuse myself. Technically, yes, I could. I just wouldn't because we have other fail safes in place.
I think that's a great question. It's pretty much the rule of writing for us. I think we absolutely could, but none of us really want to unless it's an absolute emergency. I think I was worried about sinning Star Trek. Like, we've done all of the Star Trek movies now and an episode of Strange New Worlds. It's not that I was worried about taking it down and finding the sins and whatnot, because I know the spirit behind it. It's writing too much because I want to put in all of the inside jokes and all of the references, and I have to be so restrained with Star Trek. So I think in the future I should recuse myself from writing Star Trek because I write too much.
Isn't that an interesting thing?
So it's the exact opposite problem. It's so funny. It's a great question. Keep them coming in. Again, if you haven't heard your question yet, it'll be on a future episode. We have a nice little list to get through. And back to the show. This week, how do you feel about going into your first episode of Those Old Scientists?
I'm excited because most of the people that we've chatted with have been shocked that I haven't seen any. And it feels like we would be missing the point of the show if we didn't go back to the original. So with there having so much content that we could look at that is, more modern or, just have a different take, we could go in any direction, but it feels like it's the wisest thing in season 11 to actually go to the beginning.
I am so excited for you to just see the difference, and there is just some stuff that I know you're going to absolutely love. There's some stuff I know probably hasn't aged well. We're talking about, this episode came out in 1967. This is some old TV.
That was the year I was born. Yay.
Wait, no, it wasn't.
It took you that long. It took you that long?
I like to be really careful with people's ages, so I apologize for taking a second to make sure I didn't get your birthday wrong.
I just like people to think I'm a vampire, that's all. Any opportunity I have to mess around with how old I am, I'm going to do it. It's just
vampire born in 1967.
No. I was born far before then. That's just my pretend birthday.
1961.
Also my pretend birthday.
Got it. Nice. Well, I'm really, really excited to for you to see pretty much where it all began. That's really, really fun. Before we do some predictions, we are going to do something different for this season of Captain's Pod that I'm going to spring on the ambassador.
Oh dear.
And because I like Aaron Dicer, our good friend, I do like to try and remember our thoughts and feelings about episodes. So from here on out, we're going to introduce a very, very simple ranking system
God damn it.
kind of help frame our overall thoughts at the end of the episode of how you liked it. And it's just going to be by pips. Do you think you can do it without imploding?
No. But you know what? It's never wise to turn down somebody's idea until you try it.
If you hate it, it'll be for this episode and never again.
Unless you know you're really like deathly allergic, in which case turn it down.
Yes.
Just say no to the cat.
Exactly. No matter how adorable it is. Amazing. Well, before we get into the episode, based on The Trouble with Tribbles, what are your predictions? Give me an overall general prediction and one oddly specific.
Well, I mean, I've seen part of this episode before. It's impossible to do predictions for something that is so well known. Like,
okay,
I've been spoiled on it. Everyone has seen images from this episode, so I know that Tribbles, like, maybe they multiply a whole bunch, maybe they come tumbling through a wall. I think I remember like a panel being removed and they just like spill out these sort of hairy creatures.
That's really interesting because I assume like this is a part of the internet that maybe you just haven't seen. But yeah, that is definitely an iconic image.
Yeah.
Shatner surrounded by Tribbles that have fallen out of a wall. Yeah, I think that's what you're picturing.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess since I haven't seen anything other than those like imagery, I should try to predict something else. So I'm going to predict that somebody's allergic to the creatures.
I love that. Okay.
And my oddly specific is that one of them makes a little ee noise and someone thinks it's adorable.
So we get an ee and someone thinks it's adorable.
Yeah. They're like, oh.
Amazing.
This is like an episode that if my daughter sees it, she would just want to get Tribbles.
Yeah, and not the shaved ones, though. Amazing. Well, with that, I'm excited to get into it. Let's head over to the holodeck and watch our first episode of TOS, and we'll see you all in 10 forward for a debrief. Welcome to 10 Forward, the part of the show where we grab something from the replicator, not a Tribble, and share our immediate thoughts and feelings on the episode we just watched together. The most important question first, what is your thing of choice?
It doesn't matter. Whatever comes out, a Tribble's coming with it. So
it's
even though I
Tribble.
can't do a Tribble, it's going to be getting into the mechanisms, no matter what.
You got Tribbles.
Because there's air ducts, okay?
I mean, that's how that works, as air ducts. Like, the air ducts lead directly to the warp core and engineering. I would like some of that Russian scotch that was apparently invented by little old lady in Leningrad. It's one of my favorite things. Just Chekhov claiming that everything was invented in Russia. It's beautiful. All right, Ambassador, give us a synopsis.
Okay. Well, in today's episode, we start off with a debrief, but then it becomes something else. So basically, like everyone.
Expositional debrief.
And then we're sent to a space station where there could be Klingons, but the Klingons are clearly humans. And then
that's Klingonist.
Have you seen Klingons? I have. That was not a Klingon.
Yeah, I have.
I'm just saying. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. While on the space station, people decide to buy stuff like a little furry, adorable creature. The grain is supposed to be protected because the asshole says so. Everybody hates Kirk, but somehow he saves the day.
Understandably.
And the Tribbles reproduce. Is that important? Turns out probably. Because they're also able to just sense dicks. They're able to sense spies. They're able to sense
Klingons.
Specifically the creature that is suspicious. They're able to sniff the plot device. They're able to sniff.
They were invented as a plot device. That sucks. Then again, what wasn't?
What did they end up saving the day about? Probably just some shore leaf problems.
Quadrotriticale. We are never going to get that right. Quadrotriticale. We'd have a bonus round for how many times they say quadrotriticale.
The wheat was poisoned. But thankfully, not humans died to show that to be the case. I don't really know what this episode is about, honestly.
It's about Tribbles. Yeah, I mean, there's a station that's in trouble and they got to guard some wheat. Kirk doesn't want to guard the wheat and Tribbles turn up. They detect a spy. The wheat is poisoned. Everyone loses at the end of this episode. They have a laugh. The Enterprise leaves. That's the synopsis.
Yeah. The synopsis on this one should be that the Enterprise has potentially created an intergalactic incident by injecting
War.
Tribbles onto their enemy ship. Yep.
This episode, I think if this was Lower Decks, this episode would have ended with a post-credits thing of a cut to the Klingon ship, just an external shot, just as it goes to warp of it exploding, and then war. Like, this is how the Klingon war began. You beamed all of the Tribbles into their ship, and it killed everyone.
Yeah. In this episode, we hear about wheat, a very complicated wheat name for a long time. We see Tribbles for a long time, and we see a bar fight that lasts for a long time. The end.
Yes, I do want to get into the pacing of it all. Overall thoughts and feelings, though, Ambassador. How did you feel about the episode, your first full episode of TOS? I've actually sat here and watched it with you, and seeing the roller coaster of feelings on your face and stuff, I am fascinated to see what your thoughts are.
I'm curious.
No pressure.
Like, there's parts of it I obviously was having a good time.
Yeah.
But I and there were it was a confusing experience for me because I felt like I was being pulled in all these different directions because the pacing of this was so unexpected. I don't know. I couldn't figure out what this episode was really about. I wrongly thought that this was an episode that was going to be mostly about Tribbles. And you know what it is? It is. But then then there's these other like really over the top like angry diplomat characters that are just yelling at Kirk, and then there's these like really aggressive Klingons that are not aggressive like I'm used to. They're more like just trying to pick a fight, kind of a bully. And so you got that. Then I'm assaulted by the visuals, which are so different, the sets that are so different, the clothing. Like, I didn't realize how much ass cheek is just readily available.
Wait, what?
Their costumes.
Oh, seeing the backs of them.
It's like a sneeze away from a full-on crotch shot, and I'm like, holy shit, they can't bend over.
No,
they don't. Are they wearing? Like, what are they wearing? There's one moment when a woman wearing fairy wings bends over the bar to grab some drinks to deliver, and you just like her butt's just right there. And I was totally like, I don't even know what's happening in that scene because I was like, well, that is her ass.
That's upper thigh. Yeah.
It was a lot different than I expected. So there's just a lot going on, you know? And so I wasn't really like, I was curious about the Tribbles and I was really interested to watch it. And I was thinking at one point in time when I was a little bit bored with the dialogue, I was like, how can I make my own Tribble?
Oh, no.
And so I have a couple of ideas.
Okay. Yeah. I bet whatever your idea is, it is how they made the Tribbles.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the animatron, the ones that could wiggle around and move, was a remote control like toy dog.
Yeah.
Wrapped in fur.
100%.
And then it wiggles.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
So it was a lot. I don't know how I feel about this episode yet.
That is fascinating.
I'm super confused. I felt myself being like, wow, I'm disappointed, but at the same time, is it because of like just the storytelling pacing? And then all of a sudden, nope, I get it now. I get it. I think by the middle of it, I was starting to understand a little bit of the dynamics of the characters to each other. I feel like I'm obviously being dropped right into the middle of something here. So I'm not used to Kirk. I'm not used to Spock. Like none of these characters. I didn't even recognize Scotty.
Oh yeah, totally different. Yeah, he in the movies he looks massively different.
It was, you know. So this was all me just trying to kind of like figure out where I'm at in Trekland. I think overall it was a really interesting story. I wanted it to do even a little bit more with the Tribbles somehow, but I now understand where they were going with it.
Yeah.
So it was definitely like a I don't know what's happening experience, and I kind of like those. I like whenever it's not expected. So I think overall I came out liking it, and I think maybe I like Kirk.
What?
I think I like Kirk.
He's a dick in this episode.
He's great.
He is kind of great. So he
is great. Kirk and Spock, a couple of scenes I'm just like, fuck yeah, this is fun.
Kirk and Spock, fire.
Yeah,
They're so good. They're an incredible pairing together. It is my biggest worry of doing some TOS episodes because it's so jarringly different, and it's why I've been a little resistant to do it. because the sets are different. It's a different Star Trek. So much like the Klingons haven't been established yet. The lore isn't quite there. The pacing of a TV show from the 60s is different. We sit in the only reason that this show is 50 minutes is because instead of 45 is that those extra 5 minutes are just sitting around, like the spaces between sentences, how long we sit in each scene, the over delivering on some of the jokes. And we've just gradually got tighter and tighter and tighter at storytelling for a load of different reasons, but that's always going to be the case in TOS. The pacing is always going to be a bit different. And this one in particular is one of the few episodes that was designed, from what I've researched, to be a comedy. Like, straight up, this is meant to be a funny episode. Shatner, you're going to be comedic, and he generally didn't like that, but he was like, oh, fine, I'll do it for this episode, it's fine. So this is kind of like a different side of Kirk that we're seeing, where he's not in the melodrama so much. He's playing more of like a comic grumpy uncle almost for most of the episode. So it's very, very different from any Star Trek we've seen before.
Having not seen any of the things to compare it to for TOS, I don't know where this ranks out. So, you want to know my rank. Like, you want to know this ranking system situation, which, is 1 out of 4 pips.
So I was going to do that at the end of the episode, but we can, after we've had some time to go through our thoughts and the sins.
I'm so not sure where to rank it.
Which is why I think it's a good idea to do it at the end after we've had a time to discuss it and everything.
Okay. Well, how was it for you? I mean, you've seen it all.
I think it's great fun. TOS is not my favorite, but this for me has got all of the characters singing and doing what they kind of do best and where I really enjoy them. Like, McCoy is grumpy, Spock and McCoy hate each other. Spock is the corrective one.
What was that about? Don't answer that question. It's too long, isn't it?
No, most of it is McCoy wants Spock to be human and Spock doesn't want to be human. Like, McCoy is everything Spock hates about humans in a body, and McCoy rubs it on Spock and just antagonizes him and knows the buttons that he's pushing.
That was confusing.
That's their relationship.
I actually thought that maybe it was because, so there was this element of this episode where it's like the Tribbles are kind of lulling the humans, and I thought, oh, this is part of their alien makeup where they're going to lull everyone into some sort of state of mind and then take over or something, right? And then there was another part. Then because McCoy was being such a dick to Spock and Spock was like sparring back with him, I thought, this is another side effect of the Tribbles.
No, this is them. No, that's just how they are.
I was like,
nothing to do with the Tribbles.
I had no idea that was just part of their
they just hate each other. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. I do think I had a good time, especially because there's a lot. They did a lot. We moved around a lot. We moved from scene to scene. So even though we were in the same sets, we moved around from scene to scene. We didn't sit too long at anything. And even though some of the dialogue wasn't something that hit for me until maybe we're kind of close to the end of the episode, there was a couple scenes in there that I really enjoyed. And I think overall it's something that you can't not enjoy. And maybe you're right. I think it is comedy. There's a couple comedic moments that were really, really delightful. Obviously the big hit, being when all the Tribbles come out of the wheat container. So
it's incredible. Kirk is just done. And it's, for some reason, it's always surprising to me every time, just the volume of Tribbles that come out of that compartment it never stops being funny for me. And as they're going through that scene and we've got the irritated Starfleet official that comes in and starts shouting at Kirk, throughout that scene, Tribbles are still bonking him on the head. And it keeps getting funnier for me, every Tribble that comes down. And I think there was literally a guy up there just lugging Tribbles at Kirk's head.
Yeah. I thought about that many times, like the behind the scenes making of kind of the other
Someone's
moments.
Doing that.
Yeah. And for the, Shatner to have to keep it somewhat straight while being pelted with them seemed like pretty fun. It maybe was a fun day on the set, especially when you think about just making a big Tribble pile that you're sort of standing behind. His head sort of pops up from the bottom, but 500
of them, and apparently they had to shoot that scene 7 times.
Because they were laughing?
No, I don't know why, but they just different angles. The way the Tribbles fall is unpredictable, but they had to shoot that 7 times apparently to get it get what we saw on screen, and it was just immediately everyone was like, "This is great. Everyone's going to remember this."
Oh my god. Well, I mean, are we going to go like moment by moment? Were you jumping around?
Yeah,
Like, how do you want to approach the rest of the show? So we've kind of covered all the bases of it, but
yeah. So the first question, I can't help but think of Spock when I think of you and doing Strange New Worlds and the original series. So before we get kind of like into the actual episode, overall, how did you feel about Spock and how this Spock, the OG Spock, is different from the Ethan Peck Spock that you really love?
Yeah, I could see the similarities. It was jarring at first because I know this is Spock that everybody else knows, and I've seen Nimoy, like I've seen this character,
yeah,
but I've never watched this character, if that makes sense. So I've never like watched an episode of the show and been like, oh, this is how, he's acting this Spock character out. So it was a little bit jarring for me at first. I get really distracted by costuming and makeup and the decisions that they're making as the show creators to elevate a character or shift them from, the human aspects to something new. So, he's got this sort of more yellowish skin tone due to the makeup blending into the ear and things like that. So that was interesting. And then he's wearing kind of like this shimmery eyeshadow.
Yes, I love it. Well, originally, like the Vulcans were gonna be red, completely red, and then the guy's like, he looks like the devil. He looks like Satan. We can't do this. So they went with like this green tinge instead because he has green blood. But it's such an interesting choice.
Yeah. So I was like a little distracted, and also he is playing the role of the what in TNG would be either the computer or Data.
Correct.
Like he
Absolutely.
is the information person. And in that very opening scene where they're debriefing about stuff with
Chekhov.
Yeah. I was immediately like, oh no. Please don't let this be the entire episode.
Interesting. Were you worried that was going to be the case? Like just a lot of technical jargon backwards and forwards? Like exposition?
Am trained to enjoy content that starts with a bit of a punch. And I am also trained.
Yes.
Like the start of the show for me is the next scene where it's the outside shot of the Enterprise showing up at the, the station, because the whole debrief was about something that kind of was some sort of inside joke between all of them. And then there's this red alert. We've got to go to this planet. That's the start of the show, really. So the conversations that they're having back and forth was about something that not only was I not really interested in it, it was not even really technobabble. It was like historical it was like history lessons and who did what when, and
it's a little bit of exposition about why they're heading to the planet that they're heading to. So why them and the Klingons are fighting over it. But yeah, it's buried in all of these other jokes.
But I think it's designed so that we get to see these characters interacting with each other. So I was just trying to kind of pick up on what the actors were putting down about how they're talking back and forth. And Kirk's basically telling Chekhov, get your shit together. You're not smart enough. And Spock is the guy that knows all the history. And so he's kind of got this more emotionless delivery. And so I didn't connect with Spock immediately for a lot of reasons, because this is a new iteration. By the end of the episode, however, I was seeing these little peaks of how Spock is sparring intellectually and throwing down some humor, and I
am bombarded with human attitudes constantly.
Yes.
Don't remind me. I'm trained to avoid and ignore them.
Yeah, and he had a couple lines that I just really enjoyed, and to do that without smirking, and just to kind of keep it level.
Yeah.
And then they did like the clever thing by the end too, where sort of maybe like, we're already one step ahead of you. There was one scene in particular where the I'm just gonna call him the asshole grain guy. He comes in and he's just railing Kirk for
Barris.
Yeah, whatever that guy's name is. He comes in and he's upset that they've let this traitor guy, the Tribble traitor, essentially come on to the space station, and they think he's a spy or whatever. And in this moment, we as the audience realize that they've already done their background. They've already done their work. And I really liked that because there was a lot of questioning Starfleet, a lot of questioning Kirk, a lot of anger directed at them for doing anything. And it was anger from the Klingons and anger from the diplomats. And like, so there was a lot going on for me to figure out how are these characters supposed to interact in this moment, while also realizing the characters' personalities. So Spock was kind of the constant, honestly. He was kind of my anchor.
Yeah.
I know how Spock is. I don't know anybody else.
It really makes sense, yeah. And Spock is, in pretty much every episode, the one that you can rely on. Kirk is very flouncy and can throw his weight around a bit, so sometimes he can be unpredictable and erratic. Spock is really consistent. You know what you're going to get from him, unless he's being meddled with somehow.
Like with the Tribble.
Like with the Tribble. It is so funny when he's just like, the purring appears to calm the human nervous system. I, of course, am immune.
And everyone just kind of turns and looks at him
as he drifts off. That's so great. I love that.
They're essentially these little purring cats that just lull you into a state of happiness. Pretty amazing.
I mean, so I've got to do this before we forget. Your predictions.
Yeah, can we talk about the predictions?
Goodness, from the Jeepers Creepers. So, in case you have forgotten, Deneé's general prediction was that the Tribbles will invade, and somebody will be allergic to Tribbles, which is kind of the case with the Klingons. They have a reaction to the. I'm just like trying to keep it together as I listen to your prediction and your oddly specific prediction. I had to keep my stuff together as I was typing this down.
I had no idea that I nailed it.
I did not want to give it away because I remember this scene. Deneé predicted a scene that happens. And I don't know if you've seen it at some point and it's just buried in the back of your brain. I believe that you haven't.
I've never seen any of this episode except for the still shots of a whole bunch of Tribbles around Kirk.
Your specific prediction was somebody says, the Tribbles make a noise. And they say word for word, they think it's adorable. Uhura says it's adorable as it goes, wee. I'm just like, how did you know?
I don't know.
It's incredible.
It just made sense to me that these little creatures would be something that was adorable. You know, listen, we have to take into consideration that since this episode came out, and any conversation that's come up over my entire lifespan about Tribbles, which
yes.
I don't know how many times it's happened, but let's just say it's happened 20 times. Never once has it been like, oh shit, that episode was terrifying. It was like, oh, the Tribbles. So of course I kind of have an assumption that they're going to be adorable. So.
But there was no guarantee that was going to, and it's just the way it happens. Like her is just loving on it and just goes, it's adorable. And we just, it was a great moment.
When she did that, I was like, funny. Yes, I nailed it.
Oh boy. So there's a couple of moments I want to pull out where I mean, to begin with, when the exposition started between Chekhov, you just went, well, I'm fucking bored.
Yeah,
I was like, I get it.
Man.
I'm with you. Like, I get it. Like, sometimes the humor doesn't hit. They're talking down to Chekhov. They're talking about a lot of stuff and then red alert battle stations. The first joy that I heard erupt from you was just, look at the ship. So what were your thoughts in that moment when you first saw the Enterprise just zooming across the screen?
Oh my God.
The original Enterprise from 1966.
This is how I know I'm a sci-fi nerd.
Yeah.
I loved it so much. There's something really beautiful about the how they shot the Enterprise. There's like a sweeping scene. So the first time it kind of runs across the scene, you get to see it from side profile. Then it spins around and you're going over the back of it as it approaches the space station. Then you see the space station even closer a bit later on. And you see two ships kind of like spiraling around.
Yes.
And you know, these were built. These were physical things that someone created in the props department that you just don't get to see all the time with this really incredible like detail. And anyway, but that moment in particular, here it comes. It has a fucking satellite sticking out of the deflector dish.
Yes, there is. The deflector dish is a satellite,
and then
with a little pokey thing. It's a cable satellite. You can pick up like CSPN on that shit.
And then its nacelles have these little spinny lights.
Yes, on the thrusters, on the nacelles.
And then
When you get to some like,
And then in my
oh no,
as it's flying by the screen and I see the little spinny bits, all I can hear in my head is
yes. If you could hear sound in space, that's what they sound like.
I just lost it.
When you get close-ups, it just looks like a little turbine spinning
my
around with a
God.
flashing light.
It killed
It's
me.
beautiful.
I love it. I love it so much. It made me happy. And it made me giggle, and it was just, I don't know, it's really fun to see. Like,
Wait till you see the phases.
But even the old sets, like, let's just not talk about the models and such, but the actual sets themselves. First of all, opening shot, you're at just a table with a couple things on it, including like Post-it notes. And I was like,
little monitor, the massive tablets that they have.
And then
the little styluses.
Like, there's this moment when they're like, put it on screen, and I don't know where their camera is to the person on the screen, but if it's at eye level, it's just Kirk crotch, and I'm just like, this is great. I fucking love this. And
I don't know where Uhura's camera is.
And there's so much button pushing. Like, I'm immediately taken back to one of the first times the first time I ever watched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when I was a kid. There's this one particular machine that they're all trying to figure out how to get the chocolate bars at the beginning. And there's this guy who's created a massive machine to calculate the location of a Wonka bar. And he's just pressing these big buttons, and it's making this very distinct clicking noise. And I don't know why, but I loved it. I love the sounds of clicking things like that. So when somebody is taking like a wooden spoon and they're mixing something in a ceramic bowl, like a big like batter or something that clunk clunks, I just love that. I don't know why. There's just certain things I'm like, ooh, I like that one. That one's good.
That tweaks something.
Which is why the other day when I went into a shop and they had all these different fidget things, there was one where they had all these little clicky buttons, and I'm just like it's like a Tribble noise for me. I just sort of Anyway. So there's so much button clicking in this. I was delighted. There's a moment whenever he answers a panel, he goes clonk.
Yep, the communications thing that's in the hallways, and the button on his chair when he's pissed off, and he just goes slam, as like McCoy to the bridge, and then click. The physical buttons are the best.
It's basically like someone dropping a cast iron pot onto the floor. It's like clong sometimes.
His accuracy with that is incredible.
It was so fun. And just to see their version of like futuristic technology where it's just big panels with blinking buttons. And, anytime we see futuristic technology in any kind of content, it's sort of interesting. We were just talking about that yesterday when we were talking about a movie that had like, it was like projecting, a big map across the room, and so this map fills up the entire room, like when Tony Stark rebuilds something, and it's just interesting to see technology.
He's moving the holograms about.
So for this show to sort of show it's like to give us a peek into their imagination was really delightful. But when Kirk and Spock are walking down one of the halls, and all of a sudden, like, there's like a little red wall command center, and this is, and they're like, "Oh, we got to go over here because we're getting a message because that's." So they have to stand by a wall and talk to it. I was like, "This is great."
And they can't apparently use the communicators inside the ship for some reason. Now, I heard you giggle when he whipped out the communicator. Like, I giggled because it takes him a long time to fumble it out of his, like, pants pocket, and then just flicks it open, and he does his, like, little nozzle thing, and you're laughing. So what were you thinking in that moment?
I was thinking this is how we pull out our cell phones these days. We have these massive, clunky devices stuck somewhere in a pocket, and he has to, you can see him like, oh, I'm going to have to call about this one. And he was just, I really enjoyed how he was acting. It was the begrudged captain. Who
he eats it up.
Obviously both doesn't give a shit and also gives a shit. So it just, how many times have I had to answer a phone call I wasn't wanting to answer? And it was that. He was just like, God damn it, I gotta fucking use it.
Send two security people down.
At first I thought, what is he doing with his hand? And then I realized he was pulling out and I was like, oh yeah, they can't just, they have to, they can't tap their chest. They can't say computer.
It's decorative. Shows what division you're in. That's it. I love that. The inventor of the flip phone himself said, this is Star Trek. Ever since I watched the original series, I wanted a flip phone. That was the inspiration. So Star Trek invented the flip phone. It was
so great.
Fun.
I loved it. And I like how when he was talking, he was he was just like annoyed. He's like, Kirk out. And his lips don't even move. Kirk out. Like, I'm just so done with this shit.
I hope we eventually watch an episode where he flips it so hard it closes itself and he has to do it again.
Really?
Like, sometimes they don't do a second take. He'll flip it so hard it'll bounce close and he's got to like surreptitiously like just open it with his finger again. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And there's, just thinking about how they're putting it all together, like at the space station, at like the bar, they're 10 forward. The door slides open and we kind of see partway into the next room, people are kind of walking in at an angle, and you just it's all set design and lighting and someone pulling open a door and shoving it, and you could see all their you can see this in any show, but like when they're squaring up to the camera or the camera's moving around, they're there's some things that never change because obviously there's a camera involved and it has to take like an image in front of it. So I just like to, I don't know, it's a important part, I feel, of enjoying content is to remind ourselves where it started. And so I really liked it. Okay, my pips are going up on this one. Just for the nostalgia purpose, my pips are going up.
Well, that was one of my biggest questions, was how distracting was the nostalgia compared to how enjoying the novelty of it and just accepting that it's old as heck for a TV show and just enjoying it. Because I always come back to the bridge. That bridge is so noisy. The constant chirping and burring and stuff that's going on in the background. And we haven't even touched like the engine room or other bits of the ship. Just the stuff that their imagination back then always brings me back in, even though it looks old.
I didn't really notice the noises too much. I remember when you mentioned that before, and I even thought about it when the episode started, but I wasn't. I was watching what Kirk was doing because I was really curious about these characters, and so I think that speaks for the show that I was really having a good time. I don't think it was distracting for me as much as it was. The most distracting thing is I was wondering, like, if I keep watching these women, am I going to catch butt again? Because I was just shocked how short. Like, they were really short.
There are episodes where you see Uhura sitting down in her chair and her skirt has ridden up so far you could just see entire thigh, like all of it, on the side of her butt.
And part of me was like, fuck yeah, let's do this again. This is fun,
Let's go. Let's bring back these uniforms.
And like how the uniforms, their little pants came up to their calves with like the little flare out.
Oh, on the Starfleet uniforms?
I love that.
It's great. The boots are so big.
They're so big.
The bottoms of the trousers are kind of ruffled. And when you see occasionally Shatner will take his top off, the pants, they have like a cummerbund thing. It goes up to the belly button.
That's
like
amazing.
The pants go up so high because the shirts would ride up.
I love it.
Its uniform is incredible.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't think the sounds distracted me. The sets distracted me. I think I got into the world. But the clunkiest part for me is that the show is written differently than content these days, of course.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it too much. I don't feel like it was like, oh, I can't do that again. But it was a reminder of just the pacing differences.
I think it's the biggest negative that we can't hold against the show. No. Like it's there and we can feel it, but it's understandable.
A lot of time spent with the angry wheat guy and
a lot.
How much he's mad at Kirk for doing this and mad at Kirk for doing that.
He wants more security officers, damn it.
But you know what? Had I not had that, I don't think I'd have as much of an understanding of Kirk's character by the end of one episode. So I think if you're going to drop into Star Trek in TOS land, this kind of gives you a lot. There's technobabble, there's there's diplomatic relations, there's history that you can kind of like learn about. Then there's the comedy aspect, there's a serious aspect, there's a science aspect. Oh my God, we can't avoid the fucking bar fight.
Yeah,
That is a perfect example of a what the fuck moment turning into a can we please stop to a no, this is fucking amazing.
Right? It goes on for so long.
It's
so unnecessarily long. It's forever.
Can I read what I wrote during that scene?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I wrote, where did it go? Backhanded smack, table dive tackle, triples down, swings, kicks, punches, bartender runs. Trader goes behind the counter, super happy for a free drink. Trader drinks, guy in the back, leaning on the wall, just watching on. Trader pushes the buttons, throw tackle, tray slides out, but with more drinks, more fighting, so much fighting. Bar slide cliche, table tackle, bar top tackle. These guys are working for their pay. The drums are just tingling on. The guy goes for his drink. The bartender gets it, but oh, joke's on him. He's got another one in his pocket. Hooray!
It's a big old dance, and you've just got people diving into shot that haven't been thrown. They've clearly just been said, right, and now you go that way, run. It's
great.
It absolutely ends in a place where I'm just like, this was too long, but it's kind of perfect.
No. I've never seen anything like it before. Like, it can never, ever, ever be cut out of anything. Like, this needs to stay in there. I've never watched like a sustained
so many people
fight
get thrown
like that.
around.
Ever.
Yeah. And I do love that it's got this comical backdrop of what the trader is doing. And that when he pulls the drink out of his pocket, which will have spilled everywhere.
He walked so carefully for that bar
every
scene, though.
time.
He's just like, ding, ding,
it's so
ding,
funny.
Ding, ding. Yeah. Delightful. But I think the sweet spot of that is that the bar fight didn't start because they insulted the captain. There's a
chef's kiss.
They did such a good job of this because we see it happen and we're like, oh, that's interesting and it's funny. I don't know these characters, but that's really, really funny because Scotty doesn't get triggered until they insult the ship. But then the show goes even further, and then we get to see this whole like debrief situation, and it just keeps going. Like, they really sit in the moment, and then we get to see Kirk realize that they didn't defend him; they defended the ship.
He's just gradually getting more and more annoyed and more disappointed that, like, he was kind of proud that they were fighting for his honor as Scotty is listing all of these Klingon insults, which are pretty spot on. And Kirk's just like, so what did start the fight then? And it was like, he insulted the Enterprise. It's like, you got into a fight because he insulted the Enterprise.
I wanted so badly for that to keep going, and I think that speaks a lot for the show. And that's, I think, the moment that I was really starting to dig Kirk. Because, you know, even though he's like straight to camera and it just seems like he's holding together so much angst.
Yes.
Like, he's just like, Kirk is just skin and then angst. And that's it.
Yes.
And you just don't know what's going to happen next.
That's him. You just summed up Kirk extremely well.
But isn't that interesting that you can only see one episode and pick up on that? And I think that's a good note for what Shatner is doing. And he's just ego and I didn't realize that I was going to enjoy it that much, but I had a really good time with this one.
That's great. I love that. It really does feel like that Shatner is acting in a room on his own. Like, this would all be happening exactly the same way, regardless of the people that are around him. He is so in his own kind of world and delivery. Like, it's really fascinating to watch.
The moment that sung for me the most, so like there's a couple things. One was when he was kind of going back and forth with Spock. I just genuinely got this feeling that they were having a really good time. I don't know if the actors were having a good time or not, but the characters, the friendship of Spock and Kirk was really palpable for me. And I don't think that's because I know that they're really close now. I could see it. There was a couple moments in the back and forth between the two of them where they were both leaning into each other for knowledge and direction in several scenes, and I really loved that. But my favorite comedy moment with Spock was when all the Tribbles fell out of the ceiling. And it was the line from the Doctor where he says, like, well, I think the one that most people would remember is like, close that door, like two things, do this and then close that door. And then another Tribble, like, that was really funny, but it was
one, get Cyrano Jones, and two, close that door.
Yep. But it was just before that when he was asking the Doctor for some information. The Doctor's like, I don't have that information yet. And just this one single white Tribble falls out and hits him. And he is so annoyed. He is glaring. He's like, he's just at his max.
Straw.
Like, it's almost like he knows he has enough power just to destroy everything.
Whip out a phaser and just vaporize them.
But he's just he's struggling so much. That's my favorite part because he is glaring so intent. Like, I'm like, oh, he's
He's like just squinting, just I'm done.
And so
I'm out.
by the end of the episode, when he's like, "Where are the Tribbles? Did you launch them into space?" I think part of him was like, "I hope you did."
That is like the most I've heard. Like he screams when they're doing the backwards and forwards between like Spock is like it was Scotty, Scotty's like it was McCoy, McCoy's like no it was Scotty. It's like where are the Tribbles? Like well we used the transporters, beamed them into. Did you beam them into space?
Yeah.
But no, it's inhuman. I gave them to the Klingons.
So would I have had all of this like if the show hadn't been almost an hour and sat in those moments differently? I don't think so. And so for that reason, even though the pacing I struggled with, I really know a lot about these characters because it was a longer episode and because the pacing was a little bit different. So
I genuinely do miss the days of the slower pacing, and I don't think we stopped it necessarily because it's a bad thing, but I think there is this perception that you got to clip through things like you can't risk being boring, so you have to get through it really quickly. Whereas there wasn't much to watch back in 1967. You're going to watch what we put in front of you. You don't have a lot of option there.
Also, if I was going to tweak something, though, it would be more time with the characters that I want to know more about and less time with angry Klingons or angry wheat guy. You know what I mean? Like, I think they leaned so much into him. I thought he was a super important character. So to walk away from this episode thinking I'm probably never going to see them again, it's like, oh, you got a lot of screen time.
Yeah, it was just, and it's one of the confusing things for me. And I think it was directly just to give Kirk someone to bounce off of, somebody to piss him off. And I think they put him on screen a lot so that to really understand Kirk's anger. However, I'm kind of on his side for this. I'm not on Kirk's side. Kirk is being a dick. But before
Kirk
that's definitely
great.
firmly in my sins. No, he's being a dick. I do want to address the cranial ridges in the room. How distracting was it that these aren't your Klingons? And you knew that going in, right?
No.
That they look different?
No.
Oh, fascinating.
No.
Oh, okay, cool. Tell me all about that then.
You did not tell me. I think we've talked about it before. Like, I remember now that there was some conversation at some point in time about it. But no, I did not expect that. It was very distracting because I just kept thinking, like, these are not Klingons.
They're not Klingons.
But
no.
You can't poo-poo a show for not having developed something yet. And honestly, you kind of need to give props to a show that's willing to develop something so differently. Not only are these not Klingons, they don't talk the same as Klingons. And I'm not talking about, there's a lot of like teeth prosthetics and stuff like that. Yeah. And that's not what I'm talking about. Like the cadence of their lingo, the cadence of battle, totally missing. Pretty much these guys are just like robust assholes.
They're kind of more intellectual. Like they're well spoken. They're barbing with Kirk. Very different to what we know from TNG.
I think the Klingons are really intellectual, but the Klingons I met are the ones that are intellectual about their own customs and their own history.
Yes.
And so,
which weren't invented yet.
Exactly. So these are like, what if we took like, I don't know. I don't even know what they would be based on. They're just, guys in a bar that are wanting to pick a fight.
Yeah.
However, the show's got to do what the show has got to do, and they need a bad guy, and this is the bad guy. But just them being antagonistic assholes didn't make them very interesting to me at all.
No, absolutely not. But that's all they need to be in these episodes,
right?
Because they aren't. It's so impressive to reinvent a species and then it makes us feel weird about the original concept for them. Like they're still warrioristic. They're still like in the episode when they're introduced, it's very clear that they're like the Federation perceptive is that they're bloodthirsty, murdering, torturing, horrible people that are just brutal. So that core violence thing is still there, but everything else is so different and came from the movies and then really TNG.
Oh, interesting. Well, I like the Klingons. I love Worf. After Picard, he's my favorite character. Like he was my favorite character in all of Picard, hands down. Yeah. And of course, he's one of my favorites from TNG as well. I mean, who isn't my favorite from TNG though?
Well, mate.
They're all so great. But I love the idea of this arc that there was this enemy of Starfleet that was then made into, an ally. And I think that's a really important thing for a show to be willing to evolve. And this is just the beginning. And the beginning is these guys are assholes. And here's our version of what an asshole is today, which is just somebody who can throw down an insult
Yeah.
And they were really good insults. So they did that. And they like fighting.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. But, I missed it. I was
boy.
like, oh, man, if they were to redo this scene with our Klingons.
Everyone has knives. There isn't a single knife or batleth here. Like, Starfleet Scotty is not winning this fight against a Klingon. He's getting murdered so quick.
I don't mind the antagonistic, character, but the depth that we see of the Klingons later is beautiful and a testament to the writers. Like, they did a really great job of like building into this culture that they didn't have when this episode came out. So yeah, it's interesting. It's got to be talked about though. It's so interesting. But I do have like a question. So is the idea then, because this is a little bit confusing to me, is the idea then that the premise of this episode is that we have grain that's needed specifically for this planet because that's the only food source that will grow on this planet?
Yeah, essentially. And the fact that Starfleet has this grain is a bargaining chip to say we should be the ones that colonize this planet. And there's this other body that are deciding whether the Klingons should colonize the planet or whether Starfleet should. The Klingons have the upper hand on organization and efficiency, but Starfleet has this, we got this super grain that's going to be really, really great. So that's why he's being so protective of the grain. None
of that made sense in the show to me.
It's
buried in a way of them talking that I just missed that entirely. So
because they keep bringing up these treaties and the Planet Sheridan, the Organian Treaty, which stops the conflicts between the Klingons. There's a lot of Star Trek jargon.
Yeah, and then how many times do they say quadrotritically? Quadrotritically.
Quadrotritically.
I tried to write it down, but what I wrote down is not good.
Yeah, I think I wrote it down wrong because that doesn't make sense. No. Quadrotritically. But I do love the joke that just everybody know about this fucking wheat than me. Like I was like, yeah, no, Russians invented it.
So then the Klingons, in order to have the upper hand on Starfleet, sends in a spy to work alongside asshole Wheat Man, and he poisons the wheat.
Yeah.
And then I don't understand. So, but that's okay because there's more wheat coming later.
I guess they're going to have to get some more wheat. Yeah. Like I said, nobody wins in this episode. Everyone loses. It's kind of mission accomplished for the Klingons.
But they don't really focus on that. Not only did that lose, the Tribbles are confusing as fuck as well. Okay, let's talk about this. So the Tribble walks across the table, eats the wheat, and it's going to die in a couple days. But because it's eaten, it triggers its reproductive abilities and begins to reproduce. And then the next Tribbles eat, and the next Tribbles eat.
1,700,000, however many Tribbles,
125,600 Tribbles. But then the ones that were packed into the wheat thing ate the wheat, duplicated.
Yep.
And then enough time had passed that some of them had already died.
Yes.
The solution to the Tribble repopulating problem was to stop feeding them.
Yes.
Which would also kill them because they would starve.
Yes.
Which they don't point out specifically.
No.
They don't say we have to kill the Tribbles in a slow and terrible death.
No, we have to starve them to death because they have no natural predator on the space station.
So the Tribbles also in a terrible situation, but we sent them to Klingons who will absolutely slaughter them all.
Because what they don't know, and we find out later on, is that the Klingons had a war with the Tribbles. Like, they hate the Tribbles so much, they went to their home planet to try and kill them, and there is a battle between the Klingons and the Tribbles. And I can't remember if that's TOS, if that's in a book, but it's like, it's accepted canon that Klingons had a war with the Tribbles. That's why they hate them so much.
This was something that they recorded and there's a visual of?
If it's in the animated series, I cannot remember, but I've either read that or heard it referenced somewhere. I have a feeling Worf mentions it at some point, but I could be full of shit. Like, I think Worf mentions they had a glorious battle against the Tribbles, something like that.
How do you have a glorious battle against a fuzzy creature that can only eat and then poop out a baby?
Welcome to the joke. And that explains why the Klingons hate the Tribbles so much and vice versa. Because they're in this infestation.
Then we're just to imagine a Klingon warrior in full battle gear and a bat lift just like slicing down
100%.
hundreds of thousands of...
It's a rat infestation.
Because they're not going to bring a flame torch. They're going to go in and stab them all.
Oh, yeah. Hand-to-hand combat. What, hand-to-tribble combat. It's glorious.
Oh.
It's a glorious battle.
Is it? This is really dark.
Yeah, I kind of love it, though.
I mean, I guess.
Okay, before we get into some sins, anything else you wanted to talk about with this episode, Deneé?
No,
You love Captain Kirk. He's your new favorite captain.
I really enjoyed Kirk.
Biggest surprise for me is how much you like Captain Kirk.
I didn't see him slap any women's asses or treat them like shit, so that really helped
That's
a lot.
That's your only barometer for not liking someone?
I've been told he was a sexist dick, and I didn't see that in action. I was prepared for something.
Okay, it's not every single episode.
No. This time, I really related to the begrudged captain, the one that just doesn't fucking want to deal with it today, and this is what I got to deal with today. Some asshole wheat man, some fucking Tribbles in my seat, and they're everywhere, and like, it's just... It was a day where everything went wrong. And when the Tribbles fall on his head, it was delightful. Like, I don't know. It was great. I loved him. I loved him so much. I don't remember. Let me check and see if we've got any questions because I wanted to make sure I understood the Tribble situation because I was a little confused about that. But then I wanted to make sure I understood that the idea was that the only way to stop the Tribbles was to kill them.
Let them die, to quote Kirk. Yeah. They just have to starve, let them die, and then dispose of the bodies. That's it.
That's
terrible. You have to be
preventative.
preventative. They're basically gremlins, Mogwais. Don't feed them.
That's awful.
Forget after midnight. Just don't feed them. Full stop. Unless you want exponentially or logarithmic amounts of Tribbles.
Let me think about this for a minute. I was just challenging myself. Why is it awful? Is it awful because they make cute noises and are furry, and you can snuggle with them? Like
it's just life. It's like rats.
So I'm okay with locking fleas in a room until they run out of things to eat and die because I hate fleas, right?
Fleas, flies.
Kill them all. Let them starve. I don't care about them. But Tribbles, like, what is it? I guess it is the fuzzy cuteness.
Yeah. It's what McCoy says. We are programmed to like fuzzy animals, especially if they're adorable. They have evolved. Like, there's a reason hamsters are the way they are. Like, we have selectively bred them to be cute.
Yeah, okay. Oh, can we talk about the intro music? That was another shocking moment.
That was a nice surprise, wasn't it? Yeah, it's not every single episode. I think they introduced it in season 2. But yeah,
I don't know. I'm so used to just like we don't have that sort of like blatant operatic these days. But also, it's incredibly upbeat. Like, it's like this woman's just doing this operatic like this aria. It was awesome.
It's so great.
I really liked it.
I really want to watch it's got to be out there somewhere. I want to watch her recording that in the booth, and just how like the energy she put into it and stuff. I love it. It's so great.
Here's something else that I read about Kirk. This captain snaps and points a lot. This is new. He's like, you, snap,
go.
you.
I love Daddy Kirk. Like, genuinely, when he does, like, when he is boss, he is in charge. There is no, I'm going to reassure you. It's, you are going to do as I say, mister. It's one of my favorite things about Kirk is how, like, kind of straight down the line he can be with his crew, and, like, he runs a tight ship. Like, I love it when he's talking to Scotty and Scotty's like, is this off the record? And he's like, no, of course it's not off the record.
Nope. It's like he does have standards and he does follow the rules.
Yeah.
I know that historically he's going to bend the rules, and I haven't seen those episodes, but I've heard that about his character.
But the way he runs his ship specifically is so by the book.
Which is really fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I did have a question.
Yeah.
So there's a moment when Captain Kirk sends Scotty down for shore leave, and Scotty looks really bummed about that, and I didn't get that. What was that about?
He's a workaholic.
Oh, okay.
He wants to be in his engine room. He's a 100% workaholic. Yeah.
That makes sense because later he's like, great, I'll have more time to read my pamphlets or whatever.
Schematics. Yeah.
Technical
he's
schematics.
He's a nerd. He's a huge nerd. He loves his job. He is in the right place. Yeah.
Did we see Scotty in Strange New Worlds? Did they rescue
Yeah,
him from
we
that
did
planet?
on the Gorn
That's
episode,
right.
the finale from season 2 or the penultimate finale.
Yeah, that's right. Because they went down to the
I don't
Gorn
even remember
planet,
when it
and then
was.
he was from another ship
Yeah.
that had come in,
Uh-huh.
and he had figured out how to use all the equipment.
Yeah, they went on the mission together to help out.
That's right.
Yeah, and I thought he was great. I thought he was a great Scotty.
Yeah,
But he was
had
he was younger.
that genius vibe.
Well, before we get into the sins, I feel like this is a good place to do some pipping. So for various reasons and a discussion off screen, we've moved to a 4-pip system. Ensign, Lieutenant, Commander, or Captain. How many pips out of 4 are you giving this episode, Ambassador?
4.
4 pips?
Fuck yeah, that's what's
Okay,
fun.
let's go.
Yeah. I think when you take a step out of it and you try to let all of the words and how the story is laid out like go, that getting out of my brain and then me just being able to think about like the beats of the episode, yeah, this is a good one I think to give to somebody who hasn't seen TOS before, right?
Yes, I did it. I finally picked a good episode. You didn't realize you were talking
broke your
about me,
curse.
but you were. I did it. I failed on Lower Decks. I failed on Deep Space Nine. I don't know how I did with TNG. Oh boy. Okay, I'm giving it a 3 pipper. Not my favorite.
Why?
It's
Because you have so much to compare it to.
I have so much to compare it to. For me, it's a little bit too fluffy. It's a little bit like there's big chunks of it that are non-consequential and could be like, we got to fill this 50 minutes, and by gosh, we're going to fill this 50 minutes.
Yeah,
So there's a little bit of that. But I am close to giving it 4 pips. Like, this is really 3.5 pips for me, but I'm not gonna double the metric. It's a 3 pip.
I felt that though, like with the weak guy. But then when I think about, I wasn't really watching the weak guy. I was watching how Kirk and Spock are reacting, and that's how I was learning about these characters. And so, yeah, maybe there's some fluffer in there with things that weren't quite very interesting, or could have been summed up a little bit faster in some ways, and then maybe there would have been more time spent at the end where we're learning about the Tribbles. But then again, like we probably shouldn't think about that too much. Just like they don't want to think about the doctor experimenting on it. We don't want to think about the cleanup too much, do we?
17 years of cleanup apparently as well for poor Cyrano Jones.
Should we also mention that we decided to do a poll during this the live taping of the show?
We did, to let the crowd decide. What was the result of our Twitch poll?
85% said 3 pips.
Yay! The Twitch chat is correct, and I didn't look at that.
You didn't?
No, hang on. I haven't had the Twitch stream up because I didn't want to be spoiled. I like to
There you go.
grade my things without external influence.
I see.
Beautiful. I love it. So, without further ado, let's do some sins. Battle stations, everyone. Red alert.
Warning. Warp core collapse in 10 seconds.
This is the part of the show where we re-engage our sim brains, remind ourselves that no TV shows without sin, even our beloved Star Trek. Hit me, Ambassador. Let's have some sins.
Oh my God. It's impossible to sin a show that it just doesn't have the ability to do that. But I couldn't help but when the captain is like asking Spock for information as if he's a computer instead of asking the computer.
Yes. You're right. It's absolutely true. Yeah, the library
it just
computer.
seems silly to me.
Now, there is a little way that TOS gets away with this. They don't have a talkie computer interface, so they can't say, computer, give me this information. They actually have to go to the library computer, insert these cards, and pull up information that way. So they have to do it. Yaha, they didn't really think that far ahead. So that's a big leap between TOS and TNG, which is just, hey, computer, tell me this thing. So Kirk does have that as an option, but Spock is right there. So I kind of would give him a pass for that.
Yeah.
We've talked about it, but it is starting off with all of the exposition cliche under the guise of teaching Chekhov. Like, Chekhov, you're new, you're learning. Give me everything you know about this. And it's all just exposition to set us up for the episode, and then red alert. It's a pretty cliche way to open.
It's crazy to think that your crew is going to be prepared to answer any question in history about anything at any point in time. But it is what it is. I'm going to sin from my little list, the whole beaming over thing, like from the very beginning of the show when the wheat asshole says beam over and I'll explain it. And then Kirk does.
You better come beam over and take a look at this cliche.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I can't imagine actually doing that. It's just, that's incredibly dangerous. There's a priority one, you
explain to me right now what's going on.
Yeah. So I just found that to be like, now Kirk was pissed about it and that was evident. I thought that was smart, but yeah, I just don't.
I'm amazed he didn't go in there holding a phaser.
Right? He should have. I mean, he marches off of the platform and is just like, now you explain yourself. And I'm like, okay, yeah, spank him, daddy. But like, you're literally beaming into the middle of you don't fucking know what.
Okay, spank him, daddy.
He's like, now you see here. No.
Get
great
over my knee. You've misused your priority channel. Here's my biggest sin of the entire episode, and this is why I don't give TOS the pass and the grace that a lot of people give it. And it's Uhura in this episode. Uhura is reduced to the lady that wants to shop and finds the cute thing adorable. That is her character for this episode.
But she's also the one that answers the phones.
100%. She's the switchboard operator that is directing your calls. Now, it's great to have her on screen, genuinely, but I still struggle with the stuff that they gave her to do. And yes, it's the 60s. I'm sorry. 60s. I get it. I do. But
at least she's there.
Also, it's at least she's there that I struggle to reconcile.
But representation is huge. I mean, that opens the door for everything else,
It's that's step along the way, but I've got to sin it for Uhura wanted to go on shore leave and shop. I didn't want to come down here, but she wants to shop because that's what women do. Women shop. They spend the money and they buy adorable creatures.
I totally get what you're saying, and I'm fine with sinning it, but it's like I don't know what else does she do in this episode? What would you want her to do in this episode?
Oh, anything. Like, you just do anything for anything that isn't this. But I get that's a lot to ask from the 60s.
She could have vacuumed. She could have made a sandwich.
She could have cleaned up the Tribbles. Yeah. I want her in the bar fight. I want her drinking with Scotty, fighting alongside them.
Roundhouse kick, and then we can finally know what kind of underwear
wouldn't take much.
Is Starfleet regulated gear.
100%.
Because it's gotta be like biker shorts. Like you have to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be like V panties. It's got to be something more inclusive.
I like this comment. Like, by the same tack, says Josh in the chat. All the men want to do is drink and fight.
Yep.
There's a lot of character reduction and
absolutely
things like that.
Yeah.
It is hard.
I mean,
to see.
The Scotsman enjoys drinking scotch. It's all pretty reductive.
Basics. There's some basic stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do want to be kind because it was a big swing to have Uhura and Nichelle Nichols on the show and to get that quote-unquote permission to have her on the show. So it's great that she's there. I still wish it could have done more with her. Bitter man is bitter. Your turn.
Those are not Klingons, those are humans. I would just go ahead and just swing for that one.
And that would be the sin. Because it's such an in-depth topic, we would just have the narrator say, these aren't Klingons, these are humans. Just be oblivious about it.
No, I think there is a moment where we finally do see the Tribbles in food, but the only time we see the Tribbles duplicating is just that we don't see them eating. And the idea is that they're only duplicating because they're eating, and we really didn't get to see that. I feel like the mystery could have been solved a bit more, but the Tribbles remained a mystery for as long as the episode needed them to remain.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do love, however, the foreshadowing of the Klingons. It's a really efficient bit of storytelling. The Tribbles react badly to the Klingons. That is how the agent Klingon is revealed at the end of the episode. I think that's a really efficient way of getting to the end of that story. Get the Tribbles off the transporter pad before you start beaming people.
Right.
My goodness. Like, I don't think that's how the transporter pad is supposed to work. Otherwise, why don't you all share a pad? Like, I thought that's your pad. And also, they're all over the controls. So just like all of the buttons are getting accidentally pressed mid-transport. Like, that should be a Tribble-free zone. It really should.
We could do a super bonus of all the times that they say quadra,
and then Tribble. both of them together.
Yeah, just a sort
Quadritrically.
of like mash of all of that together. Yeah.
Love that. 20 years in prison for transporting dangerous animals. What? That's really punitive. Like, that's a murder charge. Like, 20 years in prison just because he was transporting Tribbles. That's insane. Like, Starfleet sucks.
Yeah.
Galactic law is hard.
They also, I would say, my other sin in that moment was like saying it's going to take you 17 years to do this. So it's essentially a prison sentence of him picking up Tribbles. But at the same time, if they're going to die of starvation, then like
He's
if
just cleaning
everyone
up the
just
dead
stops
bodies.
feeding them, then you're just picking up bodies. But also, can't they just phaser? Like, there's got to be a way to
just vaporize them all.
Just vaporize them
I'm not
all.
trusting Cyrano Jones with a phaser, though, to be fair.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. So the next one would be like my fellow writer trusting this character with a phaser.
Fair. The sin is on me. Kirk says disrupting a space station is not an offense. It should be.
My next sin is wanting to like my desire now to dress as a Tribble.
Yes.
I need to send that
Oh
to
my
be a
goodness.
Tribble for Halloween.
That would be the next poster we do.
To be a Tribble at a Star Trek convention. Imagine a life-size Tribble. It's just a big circular.
It's got to have been done. Somebody has done it. Absolutely. Deneé's going to immediately
I'm
Google
gonna look
that.
it up. Yeah. Cosplay as Tribble. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The furries love it.
There's a person that made a skirt out of Tribbles, and then they dressed a Spock coming out of the top of it like that.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's great. Love that.
Oh shit.
This is one of my favorite editing sins, and it's when that Kirk is talking to the space station, to K7, and saying that the Klingons are on the way, and we have the camera on the executive of the space station or whatever, and he's like, no, the alarm won't be necessary because the Klingon commander is right here, and somehow
And then
the
it just
camera
pans
knows
over?
to zoom out and pan over to include the Klingons, which suggests there's a camera that's listening and knows to do that, or there's a camera person operating the camera to do the dramatic reveal.
Yep.
It's when TV stuff doesn't translate to visual communication systems. So yeah, that would definitely get sinned.
Absolutely. I would send air vents. Like, just the idea that these Tribbles somehow have made themselves into the machinery of this spaceship, and there was no warning sign. There's no computer that was like, warning, this there's no blip on a map somewhere of a vent being opened or something happening.
They're in the
inside.
engine room. That's a big deal.
They must be born tiny and then just wander in and grow very fast. But if that's the case, then they have to go into the ventilation system to find food to then continue to grow and to replicate.
And then reproduce. Yeah. I don't know where all the grain was coming from. Like, what were they eating? Because it wasn't just the grain. Because the ones on the Enterprise weren't only eating grain.
Yeah. We see it coming out of the replicator stuff, but...
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah, anyway. It was confusing to me on that part.
That's
so I
fair.
think I would try to send that part.
We've got a sketchy trader cliche. As the trader has to be this grifting, trying to con artist kind of character. And I guess back in the 60s, it wasn't so much of a cliche, but it's definitely been done to death now.
I'm going to steal one from the chat from David, who says, in Star Trek 4, McCoy laments that he doesn't know Klingon anatomy when trying to save Gorkon. But here, he recognized Darwin's skin as that of a Klingon in mere moments.
I will push back on that a little bit.
Oh.
Because what we're talking about in Star Trek 6 is open heart surgery, because Gorkon has been shot in the chest. So I think, like, doing surgery and trying to save his life is different from saying, this is a Klingon. Like, he's picking out higher blood pressure, some very, like, broad things that have told him. It's not necessarily anatomy, so it might be a little bit too nitpicky.
Welcome to CinemaSins, you crazy.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, okay, sin stays. That's fine. Kirk gets a slap on the wrist from a Starfleet official by video, and the video transmission opens with, "It's not necessary to remind you of the importance of Sherman's planet, but here's why Sherman's planet is really important. I'm going to remind you anyway." It's just for the audience. Like, we know Kirk should know this, but we know that the audience now needs to know this too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's it for me. I can go through, I can keep going through the chat though.
Yeah, pull out some from the chat. I've got another one where they're in the fight and the Klingon that's like antagonizing everyone says that humans are soft and that's why half of the quadrant is learning Klingonese. And it says the man currently speaking English. If that were true, you would all be speaking Klingon right now.
We could definitely send that they just can't replicate the wheat.
Oh, the quadriticale?
Quadrotriticale.
Quadriticules, yeah.
God damn it.
Fancy grain.
That word.
My last big one was, we mentioned it early, and so the war between the Klingons and the humans began, because it's like, imagine beaming a bunch of Tribbles onto a Romulan ship in TNG. It would not go over well. Like, that's a very flippant thing to do that kind of breaks the threat of the Klingons. Like, you're not seeing that happen in TNG.
Yeah.
Although now I do want to see the Tribbles fight the Borg.
Borg?
Yeah. I want to see how the Borg deal with Tribbles.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Just massively self-replicating.
Yeah, I guess.
Anything else, Ambassador, before we wrap up?
Nope. I think I covered all the stuff from my notes.
Okay, well, I am over the moon that you enjoyed that episode of TOS. I was genuinely worried that the pacing just wasn't going to work and it's just going to be too tricky to dip into. So glad you stuck with it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. No live show next week because it's Thanksgiving. So instead, we have a lovely interview with David Ellis, who has created the fan film 359, which follows a few escape pods, a rather famous battle from TNG. So really interesting interview. David has a really fun background with Star Trek, including writing on some video games, is one of the biggest Trek nerds out there as well.
And David joins us in the live chat, and the replicator for the wheat that I mentioned just a moment ago was able to say, yeah, they didn't exist yet in the world, so okay.
Whoopsie.
This is, a lot, that came up a lot.
Yeah, no replicators.
So David is somebody who's part of the Captain's Pod universe every week.
Woo!
And I'm really, really excited that we're finally able to release that episode to you guys.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. You guys are going to enjoy that. The following week, we will be back with a live show on Twitch, CinemaSins live. Twitch.tv/CinemaSins live. We go live on the Captain's Pod Twitter. We go live on Deneé's channel at Deneé Says. We go live on the CSPN YouTube channel in like the live section. And this live video is on there as well. I guess that's everything. Send us an email, captainsPod@cinemasins.cs, whatever it is.
Oh my God, you are off the fucking rails.
Captain's
Are you
Pod
okay?
@cinemasins.com if you want to send us an email. You guys are all the best. Until then, have an amazing Thanksgiving. I'm Captain Ian, and I have never questioned the authority or intelligence of a Starfleet official. Until now.
Nice. And I'm gonna try to emulate the character here. But he is after my grain from me.
Live long and Tribble-cide. Poddle? Live long and Poddle?
Poddle?
Live long and Podsper.
Thanks for listening. Want to connect with the show? Our hailing frequencies are always open through captainspod@cinemasins.com. Like, comment, and subscribe on your podcast player of choice, and be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Okay. Is this the best time to start eating chips? Yep.
Test. Man, I have an incredible range. Okay, now that I know those buttons work.
Roar!
Hello.
Roar!
Oh, I can't hear you.
Roar!
That's weird.
Roar! Can you hear me?
Say something?
Can you hear me?
I don't have any levels from you either.
You can't hear me? You can't hear me roaring? Well, that's exciting. Roar.
Yeah, I got nothing. Okay. Is everything okay on your end? Oh, dang it. Wait.
Wait, why are we doing crickets?
No. Dang it. Record scratch. That's the one. I found the buttons.
Oh my God, Ian. Well, hello everybody. This is weird because our banner usually says Captain's Pod Live spoilers for Star Trek TOS. Is it really a spoiler at this point?
It's been out for 56 years. There are no spoilers now. If you're getting spoiled, that's on you. You've had enough time.
The ranking interactive, put up a poll to get an audience score either here or Twitter or wherever. That's a great idea.
I can do that actually.
You can do polls
Let me do
on
that
Twitch. Now. So I think the ranking system is, instead of it being a simple 1, 2, or 3, we're doing like admirals and shit. God damn it, Ian.
Just pips.
Oh, we're gonna
Pips. However many pips out of 6.
They have a title. It's not just pips.
I'm in a quandary now because Twitch will only let me have 5 answers instead of 6. So do I reshape my entire poll to just make it captain instead of admiral? Or I could lose lieutenant commander and just have lieutenant, I guess?
I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I know. Do you want to hear the next nerdy problem that I've got? The number of pips isn't going to line up. Because, listen to me, listen. If we're doing it out of 5 and we ditch admiral works because I think admiral is 6 pips. Captain can't be 5 because captain is only 4 pips, and then that would be 5 pips. So maybe I've just got to do it out of 4. It's just going to be out of 4 pips. I think that'll make it easier. And then we ditch lieutenant commander.
I am not listening.
We had a lovely email from Flyboy who gave us some lovely behind the scenes stuff, which was really, really fun. The Tribbles were actually originally going to be called Fuzzies.
Okay.
But there was another creature in a 1963 sci-fi novel. The novel was called Little Fuzzy, and they had similar creatures. And Gene L. Kuhn was afraid that they were going to be ripped off for copyright. So it's like, you got to change the name. Sorry, we like fuzzies, but you got to change it. So they came up with Tribbles, and the original title was going to be So You Think You Got Tribbles. But they hated the title, and apparently Trouble with Tribbles is much, much better. They sewed together 500 Tribbles for this episode.
Yikes.
Just the work of hand sewing 500 Tribbles is incredible.
But did they ever explain how some Tribbles can go up the walls?
Suction cups.
Okay.
That's my head canon.
Well, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So did they actually put suction cups on some of them, or did they just glue them to the wall?
I imagine they were glued to the set, or like Velcro or something like that. David Ellis says, dang, I have a great behind-the-scenes story straight from Chris Doohan, who is James Doohan, Scotty's son. One that's never been told elsewhere as far as I know. That's juicy, David. And I have to question why you didn't tell us during our interview.
Because he just thought of it.
Chris and his brother Montgomery used to go to the studio with their dad while he was working. This is the Scotty's kids. James would leave Chris and Montgomery in his dressing room or let them play on the shuttlecraft set. Oh my goodness, that's so fun. One day he left them on the shuttlecraft set while he was going to shoot a scene. The boys got bored and went exploring. They found a hallway set that they'd never seen before. How did you get bored on a shuttlecraft?
Kids.
The boys got bored and went exploring. They found a hallway set that they'd never seen before, and it had doors high up on the wall. Chris said that either he stood on Montgomery's shoulders or vice versa to see if they could open the door. They did, and hundreds of Tribbles fell on them. They got scared and ran back to the shuttlecraft. James came back 5 minutes later and said, "You good boys, thanks for staying where I told you." Chris never told James that story until decades later at Thanksgiving when he figured out where they were way past getting in trouble for it. When he did, he said his dad didn't talk to him for months. And then somebody had to reset all of the Tribbles. That is straight from straight from David Ellis's mouth, who heard it from Chris Doohan. Thank you, David, for sharing that with us. That's incredible.
Oh my God. So the sin, as always, is kids. Well, you know, somebody walked in there and like, how did these get out?
Like, who did it? Did the Tribbles actually escape themselves? Can you imagine the fear? Like, I am on this TV set, hugely successful TV show, and I broke part of it because the Tribbles fell out. That's terrifying.
Yeah, not ideal. Fun fact, NBC got angry letters from animal rights activists about them abusing Tribbles, says David.
It's amazing. I don't know if I believe that, but
absolutely. Absolutely, I believe this.
You've got to believe the Tribbles are real, and no one's that stupid, surely. You got to know the Tribbles aren't real. I guess if you're watching it on a black and white TV, maybe you don't.
And I kind of thought, like, okay, I totally believed that Shatner was about to, like, boot kick punt one of them.
Oh, absolutely. I thought he was going to snap one of its necks.
But he didn't.
Whatever it is. No.
You could kind of see that anger restraint. It was great. This one's from Flyboy. No one looked at Koloth and said, he looks like Trelane. They have the same face in this episode. That's, that's probably
That's funny.
A deep...
yeah, so the actor that plays the head Klingon also played a character called Trelane in a different episode.
Sin, not just for this episode. When Uhura calls down from the bridge, we see her bridge station behind her. Does that mean there is a floating camera behind her chair that she...
Makes no sense. It's so avoidable because if you just show the background being the bridge, we know where the camera is. But this camera isn't at her desk. It's behind her for some reason. It doesn't... It's so bizarre.
Here's a Sin from Flyboy. Bartender guy is a terrible businessman. 10% markup at cost of 6 credits is 6.6, not 10. Either he's an idiot or he thinks that all of his customers are an idiot. By the way, ding. Yeah, don't do your math in front of people like that. Do that in private.
No, 100%.
They're having very open conversations at the bar about ripping people off. Here's a question from David. I'm curious about how well you think the set designers of the Strange New Worlds Enterprise bridge did when they recreated the original bridge with new technology. This is a great question.
This is the same bridge. The same bridge that we see in Strange New Worlds. Same ship. In theory, the same bridge, but just updated.
I'm really curious. I want to go back now that I've seen it. And I want to watch a Strange New Worlds episode again, where we can kind of see. But I remember that, Uhura was kind of up on that top tier, and then they have a dip down with like the captain's chair, and then they've got the other people at their little panel stations kind of in the foreground of the camera. So it feels like the layout is the same. They also used in the new Strange New Worlds, they used a really similar gray, red, black color palette. And I'm really curious to watch now because I was paying attention to their panels that they were more square with like more square button light ups. And I feel like they did that in Strange New Worlds as well, where a lot of the panels have this sort of circular, the panels that they're looking at, that they're kind of leaning over, are more curved. And then they have like little button panels.
Yeah,
and then
they have physical buttons.
Yeah. And then up on the wall, they have the more just sort of like rectangular ones with like the little square blinking. And I feel like I remember that from Strange New Worlds as well. Yeah,
they've kept some of those graphics that you see on screen too.
So it feels like it's in the same vein to me.
I remember somebody behind the scenes saying that I think they're going to try to gradually make the Strange New Worlds Enterprise look more like the TOS Enterprise as it evolves. I don't know to what extent they're going to do that, how that's going to pan out, but
that's interesting.
I'm fascinated to see how.
Let's just hope that somebody's like, yeah, we just don't need all this equipment anymore, and they give it to somebody who's recording episodes for fan stuff, because like you give it to people who can use it instead of putting in the garbage.
And for fan movies.
David says, at my first Star Trek convention at age 14, I played Scotty in a recreation of the scene in Bar Fight, and then we performed in front of Walter Coyne.
That's incredible. That's so fun.
But we ended the scene with the pie fight instead. Oh my God, that's fucking great. Throw this one up here from JCD. Would you rather fight 10 Tribble-sized Deneés or 1 Deneé-sized Tribble?
The Deneé size, I'll take on the Deneé size Tribble. I don't want 10 Deneés of any size.
That's terrifying, isn't it?
It's too much.
Especially 10 that are fighting, even if they're Tribble size. Like,
I
will go straight for the Achilles tendon.
Straight in there. I've just got 10 sets of teeth on my ankle immediately.
No. I pick up weapons on the way. I've got hands. I can hold stuff.
Yeah. Shit. Nick said, sing, Klingon, Klingon, Klinging. They hadn't nailed down the pronunciation yet, and they didn't correct anyone.
The Klingons.
The Klingons. The Klingons. Yeah, the Klingons. So many different things. The Klingings. Yeah. And Klingonese is something that just disappeared after TOS. David Ellis said, Kirk got buried in Tribbles because they had eaten all the grain in the storage bin. But if that hadn't been the case, he would have been buried in grain. He should not have opened that door. Great. That's a great sin.
Yeah, he really
great
shouldn't
point.
have.
He opened it because the story knew it was going to be Tribbles and not Grain.
Yeah, not a good
That's
idea.
a good point. Good point.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Shit. No, I don't got it.
No, you don't got it? Okay, I'll keep vamping.